and welcome to More Than a Game, a show about Australian football, the Premier League, and more. My name's Tommie C, and joining me this week, we've got Jesse. We've also got Scotty. Gents, how are you doing this week? Jesse?
Mate, very good, very good. Mid-game week, as we mentioned. So there's plenty to football to come, but the football that's been played so far has been entertaining, if not a little bit unconventional, some of the results so far.
Interesting way of putting it, mate. Scotty, welcome back. Always great to have you on the pod. This week we asked on Twitter, we asked of our followers, what interesting tidbit of information would they have underneath their commentary label if they were on TV? What would yours be?
Well, first of all, great to be back. Thanks for having me on. I think it would be I was part of an Invincible side back in my under-11s days, went the entire season. And an extra point, I think, that puts us over other Invincibles. We didn't have a regular goalkeeper, so we had to rotate the keeper, and we still went unbeaten in that season.
Was it like a Roman goalkeeper? Do you remember that? Like how they could use their hands, but like they just went anywhere?
We weren't that brave. So our manager just you had a half in goal, and that was like every 8 or 9 matches you had to spend 45 minutes or however it was in goal under 11s. So yeah, kept everyone on their toes.
When you said Roman goalkeeper, Tommie, I was sort of trying to picture like Julius Caesar keeping goals out, in a gladiatorial arena. Is that what you had in mind?
Well, actually, mate, I think I've just had a Today I Learnt moment because I always thought it was a Roman goalkeeper, as in from Rome. But I think I've just realised that they actually mean roaming goalkeeper.
Yeah, that's certainly what I would have said.
And I always thought, I wonder where that name comes from. Like, Roman, like, is it because they used to wear sandals or what? Right, instead of going down a history rabbit hole, let's get into some football, shall we? Jesse, what did you like from the week of football that was?
I liked a lot of the Champions League action. Obviously, Haaland and Mbappe just absolutely shredding it. Just fantastic to see because we both know, we all know that they're going to be both great players in the future, but just the stats so far is just extraordinary. And I know that Mbappe's been playing for Monaco and then PSG, but I mean, like Haaland's been playing part of it for another club other than Dortmund, and his numbers are just absolutely extraordinary. And they're different players. And everyone's talking about this sort of comparison between the two of them. And you can't help but feel that, if Real Madrid and Barca had the money of yesteryears, they'd be tempted to throw the money at both of them, even though they'd probably go financially broke like they are now anyway. But
even broker?
Even broker, yeah. But you could imagine those two up front in any team. Like, you might as well just quit if you're going to be defending against them. So that was definitely my moment of the week. A special mention on another note for Minamino, who got a lovely, delightful goal last night against Chelsea. I thought that was a nice goal.
I really enjoyed that too, where he sat down the goalkeeper. And I guess, Jesse, onto your earlier point, it felt like this week was sort of the key narrative thread that came out of the Champions League was that there was a bit of a changing of the guard with Haaland and Mbappe sort of overshadowing Messi and Ronaldo this week, as both of them got results that they didn't really like. Scotty, what about you, mate? What did you like this week?
I mean, for me, it was definitely the Barcelona result was a real sign of since I remember watching football, Barcelona, if they haven't done well in the Champions League, it's because they've been doing well in the league, or if they're not doing great in the league, they're really pushing in the Champions League. They're just not at the races at the moment. And you hear the news about all of their financial issues, and so they're going to have to sell like the higher earner players. So they're going to be in a even worse position. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I would have been tempted to let him go at the end of last year if they're in such a bad financial state and just really have a season of rebuild. But they just try to cling to everything. And I don't know if Koeman's the right man, but I don't know if anyone would do great there right now. It seems a bit of a dire place to be.
Well, like Barcelona are really in a transition period, and Koeman is sort of the perfect faller guy to, like, he got rid of Suarez, and really, if they had have gotten rid of Messi, then Koeman takes all the blame for that. You can say, yep, he alienated him, and you can use Koeman as a tool to, I guess, set the club up for a few years' time, and arguably what I thought they were doing at Man United with Solskjaer, but Solskjaer has kind of stuck around for a bit longer than what I expected. So, in a way, it's kind of sad seeing, I guess, Barcelona and particularly Messi's situation at the moment. But they're also, it's completely of their own making too. So
I don't feel as bad for them, considering that they've absolutely gouged the Premier League, especially our club, over the years. Every time they've had these moments where they're starting to look a little bit brittle, they just steal other people's players and bolster up again. So finally, their lack of a deep squad and just building their own talent is starting to bite them in the ass. So, it couldn't happen to a better club.
Scotty, I'm not sure if we've got your opinion on this since we last had you on the pod, but Lee Broxton-Fax in the comments now is asking, do you think Messi would even bother going to somewhere outside of Spain, or does he need Spanish, I guess, to get him through?
I mean, it really depends if he joins someone he knows. So maybe it's Pep that he goes for. That might be it. I can't see him going to like PSG or anything like this. There's such a different culture, nothing that he would know. I mean, he's still got a couple years left playing very good football, but is he going to do that if he's completely uproots? He's been at Barca since he moved across from Argentina. So maybe he goes back to Argentina just for some, stat padding and trying to match Pele's goal tally or something. I don't know. But I can't see him going to like Chelsea, for example.
It's a good point you make about stat padding, because like at this point of his career, does Messi really need to stat pad? Like he's really done everything, and surely how motivated can he be? Like to go back to Argentina, for example, and smack away 50 goals a season for Newell's Old Boys or something.
The MLS, he probably end up at.
That's not a bad shout, But all right, let's keep moving though. Jesse, what didn't you like this week in the world of football?
To be honest, there wasn't too many things that stood out for me. So it just it just came down to a few player errors. We saw Juventus absolutely, shoot themselves in the foot in the first leg of that game, which just, as a fan, when you watch, I mean, I've had my fair share of my own goalkeeper shitting himself in recent weeks, so I know the feeling, and I'm not blaming the goalkeeper entirely on this one because it was a shit pass from the defender. But
did someone have like a Gary Lineker moment, or
listen, mate, steady. But I think as a fan, you tear your hair out because goalkeepers are progressively doing more and more of this, and it's happening across all the different leagues, and it just drives you nuts because obviously there's a time and place, but there's also just times where you're just like, what is the point? What is the actual point of trying to play out in that situation? Like, what are you trying to achieve? Like, you've got a slim percentage chance of squeezing through and then getting them on the break, but just play the percentages in that situation, and the percentages is that you are away from home in a Champions League first leg tie.
First few minutes as well.
First few minutes, it's just like it just was just one of those things which it had a massive effect on the team for the rest of the game, and then obviously Porto scored another one. So plenty of work for Juventus to do in the second leg, and I think, to be honest, that's probably my own goal of the week, just because it was such a poor decision.
Mate, there's two things I just want to add about that. The first thing is Juve losing in the Champions League was the closest thing I had to a moment of the week this week. The other thing is I just want to point out that Szczesny actually played in Rome, hence you can see why I'm confused about whether it's a Roman goalkeeper from Rome or if they are a Roman goalkeeper. You can see how it's an easy mistake to make.
I'm seeing it. I just know that your brain's been working in overdrive for the last 5 or 6 minutes. How can I link the two?
All right, Scotty, what about you, mate? What haven't you liked this week?
I thought it was a bit odd to see. I don't know if you've caught the highlights, but I think it was in the Championship or League One Ipswich match. The referee squared up to a player and they went head to head. And it's I mean, it was late in the game, and maybe you're a bit tired and frustrated, but like the only high ground you have as a referee is you don't get involved in stuff like that. And I mean, I haven't seen if there's been any inquiry or sort of, he said something that was completely beyond the pale and that's why they squared up. But it's referees. I defend referees a lot because they've got a really tough job and they get completely scrutinised. But maybe don't start fights with the players. That would be a good idea.
I'm glad you brought this up because I remember seeing this and I thought, oh, geez, this is pretty meaty. There's some discussion out of this, but to be honest, I completely forgot about it in terms of my notes. But in terms of the actual incident, it was bizarre, and I think it might have been Max Rushton during the week. I think he did an article for The Guardian about it, which is that this has been a long time coming, and it's almost more surprising that this kind of thing doesn't happen more often, really, because, like you say, referees, they get such a raw deal from people like me who just constantly give them shit. And I guess I'm not abusive, but I definitely am a wind-up merchant. And I can only imagine how much worse it is at the top level where not just the players, but you've also got a couple of thousand people in the stands as well. And I guess it boggles the mind, I guess, a little bit to some degree that it doesn't happen more often. But I guess it's only I imagine it's only a matter of time that there'll be some sort of inquiry into this. And I imagine, unfortunately, the guy's probably going to miss a few weeks as a referee, which, considering that's his job, I imagine he probably is going to miss probably going to take a pretty nasty fine out of it as well.
Yeah, I think the way to cut it out, or cut a lot of that kind of stress out there, is just to have the same kind of rules they do in rugby. Like, captain only speaks to the ref. And, you give any abuse to the ref, any name call, anything like that, just like they're off for a bit. Tell them call out. That's it.
This actually segues really nicely into like a bonus own goal I had. Easter egg for everybody, which was to do with referees' egos. So. For me, it's a space that's starting to grow into a bit of an issue at the moment where we're seeing decisions which are wrong decisions, and then VAR's saying maybe you should go review them, and the embarrassment of having to go back on a big decision is almost overruling common sense. And we're seeing referees actually be very stubborn and not wanting to make mistakes and not wanting to admit mistakes, and it's becoming an absolute shit show. Yeah, we'll talk about it soon, but one of them that comes to mind is the Sheffield United game this morning, and a clear penalty in the last sort of 10 minutes. And it's just like, what is going on? Like, how is that being missed by the referee? How's that being missed by VAR? But they just don't seem to want to accept any kind of responsibility. And it's almost like when they have to, their egos get in the way, which is worrying. You don't want to see that trend continue.
But Jesse, like that's a very interesting point that you make about the psychology of VAR and referees, and also the person who's in the VAR box too. Because I mean, I think you've seen very different responses to recommendations from the VAR depending on who the referee is. For example, I think some and some of that does come down to ego, right? Like I think there are some referees that have said, no, like I don't care what VAR tells me, like I'm right, like doesn't matter what the evidence is, unless like I've completely missed it, not seen it, then pretty much I'm not going to pay much attention to VAR. But then you've got the flip side where any sort of involvement from the VAR instantly sort of brings doubt into the referee's mind that, oh shit, maybe I've made a mistake here. What have I missed? Oh, gee, someone else is bringing it to my attention. And then like they're otherwise backtracking on decisions that were probably right in the first place.
And the reason why this is a developing space, though, is that the old thing used to be is that we got the replays as a viewer, but the referee didn't. So if the referee screwed up, they could just be like, listen, it happened in fast time. I didn't realize it was a mistake. And they could sort of just use that as an excuse. But now that they get the option to watch the screen like we do, that's why this is a concern, I think, because they are seeing the same thing as us, yet they're coming to different conclusions. And sometimes you can see that they just don't want to admit that they got the original decision wrong. So as I said, it's a bit of a concern because it's starting to happen more and more. So
we saw in the A-League match yesterday between Western United and MacArthur about how one of the Western United goals, I think it was, that VAR reviewed, not because of something that really happened in that phase of play, but pretty much it was happening in the phase of play before it. And it was, I think the commentators called it re-refereeing the match. And VAR has got to be very, very careful that it doesn't go down this path where it's re-refereeing matches from the VAR booth, because no one wants that. And it was never what VAR was designed for. And I don't know about you guys, but I mentioned to someone yesterday that as far as VAR goes, I was very pro VAR. I thought it only made sense, but the further and further and deeper we get into VAR, I'm just like, no, get rid of it, because it's created more problems than it's solved.
Me too.
I don't think anyone is enjoying.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Alrighty, fellas,
sorry, very quickly, I would just say that the one thing I think you need to add in is to have time limits. So there should be a time limit between the incident and the VAR referee notifying the referee. There should be an amount of video that the referee is allowed to watch. Like the VAR refs should be showing them the thing that changes their mind. They should be going, look at this, 10 seconds of video. This will change your mind. And if they go, okay, I can't see anything that changed my mind, cool, carry on with the match. Like the longer you have it, the more people, the more it breaks up the play, the more people get frustrated at it. Like I just think you've taken a game that's very free flowing, especially like a league like the Premier League, and you've added these breaks in. People don't know whether to celebrate a goal. Yeah. And I mean, even like I think I will probably get to it with the offside decisions even this week. But if you have to spend more than a minute deciding whether it's offside, it's not. Play on. That's it.
Yeah. Benefit of the doubt to the attacker, I think. Yeah.
And so I think you guys will remember the 2018 World Cup, how we saw that in the group stage, VAR was getting quite involved in the matches. But then in the knockout stages, the bar seemed to be raised for at what point VAR would get involved. And basically for the whole group stage, I think VAR got involved maybe twice. But it was like everyone praised, everyone said like this is exactly how it should be. Like I think at that point, VAR had been in the Bundesliga, I think in the A-League, and I think maybe Serie A as well. And fans from those respective countries were like, oh, cool. Like, why can't they do that in like the A-League and the Bundesliga and stuff? But then like after that, they brought it in the Premier League, and it's still not right in the Premier League or the A-League. And so it's like, how have we regressed? Have we made it worse in the last few years? Look, I hate to be another podcast that talks at length about VAR, but it's just one of those things at the moment, isn't it? But look, fellas, shall we get into some actual football that involves a ball and not just refereeing decisions, shall we? We'll get into the Premier League now. So really, I guess the big match from not just overnight, but from the last 48 hours in the Premier League was the Merseyside derby. Which, Jesse, I hope you're feeling all right. But would you say that this was an unexpected result?
Yeah, I would. In all honesty, I didn't necessarily think we'd win because I've got a lot of respect for Ancelotti, and when he's managed, it doesn't matter if he's managing Everton or Napoli, he seems to have Klopp's number, and really we find it very difficult to get through his setup. So I didn't necessarily expect to win, but it just was such a disappointing result for us because, we've already lost 3 on the bounce at home, which is still incredible considering our recent records. And then did
that make it 4?
It's 4 at home in a row that we've lost. So, I think, there's no doubt that it's a kick in the nuts. It's, yeah. Well, luckily I'm not a Melbourne Victory fan. So, But I'm a Wellington Phoenix fan, though, so I can empathise right now, similar parts of the table. I think the thing for me with the Liverpool side of things is that, I talked about it quite a bit last week, so I won't say much, but I just think that we are obviously in a rut. Everyone can see that. But the concern is sometimes when your team's losing isn't so much is that they're losing. It's what's the plan? What's the plan to get out of the rut? I think Klopp's probably been a little bit too stubborn with his tactics, considering the amount of injuries we've had. So the injuries are there. We can't get around that. But he just seems to be persisting with the system. And the players, I call them handbrake players. So we've got too many players like Wijnaldum and stuff who are good players, but when they are put in that position in the final third, they want to stop and they want to look for support players. And it means that essentially you're only looking to the front three to score goals. And that's just, it's stifled kind of our attack. And our back lines have also got another story going on as well. So, yeah, no, I think that we were there to be taken by Everton. Everton hadn't won for such a long time. Record smashed. I think it was the first time in 23 years. So the hoodoo's off for them. So if there was going to be a time that you were going to come to Anfield and beat us, it was last night. So, yeah, fair play to Everton. They did essentially to us what we did to Leipzig during the week. They took a couple of opportunities and punished us. So I can't complain. They deserve to get the result in the end. I thought the penalty was a bit dodged. I think it was probably more accurate. A 1-0 win, a 1-0 win to Everton probably would have been more fair in my eyes. I don't think it quite deserved a penalty, but I'm sure the viewers might have other opinions on that.
Mate, just to clarify, so it's the first Everton derby win since 2006, 3-0 to Everton on that day. Any guesses for who the scorers for Everton were that day?
You're going to mention a certain Aussie, are you? You're going to say, was there a Tommie Cahill? Was there a who was the other?
Tim Cahill was one, and there was another player that scored 2 goals. So he was quite prolific in the A-League. In the Premier League.
Arteta?
No, Arteta wasn't prolific.
Oh, jeez, what?
Mid-noughties.
Maybe a prolific passer, but no. And when I say he was prolific, he was only prolific for about 2 seasons.
2006.
Crystal Palace. There's a big clue.
Andy Johnson, did he go?
Bingo. Andy Johnson scored 2 goals, which Andy Johnson was one of those weird players that he went through a name change. Do you remember he was Andy Johnson when he was playing for Palace, and I think he scored 20 plus goals in a season, and then he went to Everton, and then all of a sudden he became Andrew Johnson, and I was like, wait, is this the same guy? But look, I tell you what, Jesse, Scotty, this game kind of felt like a bit of an is it an allegory or an analogy for Liverpool's season? They were tentative in the early stages, looked sort of out of form, a little bit rusty, conceded early, which is maybe sort of the Van Dijk injury to their season. They never really looked like they recovered from that. There were some patches where they looked good throughout this match and looked like they were going to sort of get back on track, maybe get back into the game, and then there was the Henderson injury again on the 30th minute. So another setback, when they were just starting to look like they were getting back on top, they couldn't end up scoring. And then there, I guess, was arguably a soft goal towards the end where, like you say, I think conceding 2 on a night like that where Everton didn't really offer that much going forward. I mean, that Hummers goal at the very beginning, the Hummers through ball.
Yes, yeah.
That was beautiful.
Nice.
And look, the finish was very good too. So I don't want to take anything away from Hummers or Richarlison there. But, I mean, beyond that, they didn't really offer much. And Everton sat very deep, which in the past has been a bit of an issue for Liverpool playing against defences that sit very deep in a low block. And Ancelotti got his tactics right, I think, too, where he had basically a back 5 with Coleman trying to basically keep who would have been on that side would have been Robertson out of the game on that side. So he got the tactics right too, and you sort of see there are a few things here conspiring against Liverpool with the injury, the early goal, and giving away, I guess, a soft penalty as well at the end. Which, so for me, it was kind of like that's Liverpool's season there in a bit of a nutshell. Like they haven't played badly. They were a little bit unlucky. They weren't very awake at the very beginning, and it's just, I guess I can only say that at this point, Jesse, this is probably a bit of a flashback to probably 3 or 4 years ago where it's a bit like of a return back to the mean for Liverpool.
100%. Like I remember last season when we were like, 16 points ahead or something, and I was still shitting myself because, those cuts run deep of us just losing leads and capitulating in games. So yeah, I think it brings back a lot of memories for us, and that I think the the concern now, obviously, is whether or not we're going to get in the top 4. At the moment, we can't even buy a win. So, if we're going to get in the top 4, I mean, Chelsea had a draw. It was there if we wanted to try and get back in again. Couldn't, and now Everton's even on points with us with a game in hand. So, yeah, there are teams around us and below us that are in far better form, which I suppose you two will be happy to chime in when your team comes up. Far better form than when we are. And the way the season's going, I mean, stranger things have happened. I mean, who knows where we're going to finish now. So my concern at the moment is that we don't seem to have a plan B with our tactics. So it's not so much the fact that we're losing, it's the fact that if we're going to stop the rot, we need to come up with something, because basically the other teams have really figured us out. It's quite obvious.
Jesse, what's your plan B? What should Klopp be going to? Should he be going to like a 3 at the back? Should he be playing 4-4-2, or what should he do?
Yeah, no. Well, consider the formation. He never changes the formation, really. I mean, apart from the occasional 4-3-2-1 blending into a 4-3-3, that's about it, really. Like we're not that expansive. We've never tried wing backs. We've never tried anything like that really since he's been around. So we're quite sort of like, and I never really thought that we were a system team. I know that we had a big identity with pressing, and that was all very much like our identity. But I'm concerned that there are players there that are very good players who just don't seem to be working well within the system anymore. And that for me means the system needs to change. Thiago. Like, you take him out of a Champions League winning team and you plonk him in that team, and he's not looking like Thiago. And then you take Minamino out of that team and he goes and scores 2 goals for Southampton. So what he did against Southampton last night is what we thought we were getting when we bought him. And then he comes into the setup and then he struggles. So that for me shows that whatever we're doing in training, maybe we're trying to mold players into the system rather than mold the system around the players. And that's concerning me a little bit.
That is something that West Ham fans are very familiar with, is a player leaving, going elsewhere and doing far better than they ever did for us. So we feel you there. Yeah. But anyway. I guess it would be really interesting to see if Klopp does change things up. And I guess going to a back 3 from a back 4 is sort of the ultimate Premier League. We're struggling at the moment and need to change things up. Mm-hmm. Jesse, one other thing, though, arguably, there were some poor performances from senior Liverpool players yesterday. Do you wonder if the dressing room is starting to turn a little bit there with, like, uncharacteristically, we're seeing, like, Mane, for example. He seemed to run into dead ends and make bad decisions, which was, like, probably one of the worst performances I've seen from Mane, for example, for quite a while. And Mane doesn't have bad games, really, for the last 2 years.
That's what I mean. Like, these players don't become bad players overnight, and that's why I think it's a system thing, because I think that you're seeing, like, Mane is a great example. So he's playing in a position where he's having to go back deeper because he's receiving the ball from a midfielder further back in the pitch because we haven't got a Henderson or a Fabinho pushing them forward. So he's limited to what he can do. And see, what you're seeing is you're seeing Mane and Salah both trying to, weave through 6 players to get into the box. Whereas what used to happen is that because the 2 fullbacks were free down the side, because of Henderson and Fabinho, the fullbacks would feed them and you'd have Mane receiving the ball further up towards the box. So the whole system is screwed because our centre-backs, we've got midfielders playing centre-backs, and we've got the midfield isn't a good fit. You've got too many sort of different players in the midfield and none of them are really enforcers. And that's where you miss Henderson, and that's where you miss those little players. So it's not a coincidence that we actually play one of our best games this season against Spurs when Milner came in, and they just said, you're going to go in there and you're just going to enforce. And he freed everything up for the rest of the team. So it's a system that has worked for us when all our players are fit. Our players aren't all fit. So I think he needs to come up with a plan B, because going back to your original question about the dressing room, players like Mane and Salah are going to start getting really fed up with it if they're not going to be getting goals, because then they start to have their own confidence lowered. And that's a concern for me as well.
I mean, there's already been rumours for the last maybe 12 months about Salah maybe going to Real Madrid, even though they don't have any money. So, I tell you a player I'd love to see in a red jersey, and this is just a bit of food for thought, is Rafinha. That would be such a tasty signing, and I just have this feeling that we might have an eye on him. Leeds fans will get at me, but
if there's any club that he goes to in the Premier League, if he leaves Leeds, I'd love to have him. I just think he'd be a great fit for us. But anyway, another day.
I guess, like, we've seen City sort of struggling with the post Company and David Silva era, and I guess they've since sort of turned things around in the second half of this season and now are looking incredible. But we have seen that it's incredibly difficult in the Premier League and elsewhere as well to be able to rebuild a squad or regenerate a squad. And I guess Klopp is kind of at that point now where he maybe does need to throw some fresh life into the squad. And he kind of had that with Jota, and I guess he's been pretty unlucky with injuries with him on that front. But yeah, I guess maybe it is time to move Salah on and get Rafinha in there. That'd definitely shake things up a bit.
We'll see. It could be Salah or Mane. It'll be one of the two of them. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting in the summer to see what happens to those players. So, yeah,
fascinating stuff. But all right, let's get moving though. Plenty of other games for us to cover. There was 2 relegation 6-pointers that were played overnight. One of them turned out to be a relegation 2-pointer because it turned out to be a draw. But first up, Fulham hosted Sheffield United. The first of the 2 relegation 6-pointers. It was just a single goal for Ademola Lookman, who gave Fulham the very important 3 points. Fulham now are just 3 points behind Newcastle, and Fulham play Palace, Spurs, and Liverpool in the next 3 weeks. Could Fulham actually be clear of the relegation zone after those 3 games?
I'll go. You go, Scotty. You go.
I mean, I think that Fulham are really like getting the dividends from keeping Parker. I think a lot of people were talking about Parker not being experienced enough as a manager for the after his start in the Premier League. But he's got them playing decent football. He's got a couple of players like Lookman, Ruben Loftus-Cheek as well. If he can get a decent run of games without picking up stupid injuries, it'll be great for him. But he's got a couple of players there that can really provide a spark, and they were the difference. And I think they can. I mean, they're definitely playing better football than Newcastle right now. So, I mean, they give Palace a go or those kind of things. Like, they're going to chase teams down that are above them now, and that, I mean, it's on the flip side, Sheffield United. Well, I don't really know what they're dead in the water this season after a very solid last season. It's a big turnaround.
Yeah, and I mean, if there's been 2 teams that have been hit really hard by injuries, one is Liverpool and the other one is Sheffield United. They lost, I think it was Jack O'Connell to an injury. I can't remember if it was the first game or in a preseason game.
It was early.
And obviously they lost Henderson as well. And so those 2 injuries or changes have pretty much almost killed off their season before it started. I mean, a lot of people rate Ramsdale, and I think he makes a lot of saves that he should make. But he's just not in the same ballpark as Henderson's performances were last year. Scotty, back to your point about Scott Parker, though. I think Scott Parker has done an incredible job at Fulham this season, because I remember when I think it was the first round that they played Arsenal, and I thought Fulham were absolutely dire. I thought they could go, they could set a new record for being one of the for the least points in a season, but. He has really evolved that team, and now like they're hard to beat. They don't create heaps of chances, but for a team that's got, I think it's Harrison Reed, who's like 5 foot shit in the middle, in the center of midfield. Like they are a pretty tough team to play against. They're kind of this season's Sheffield United.
He's been one of their best players, Reed, in the last few games, mate. So yeah,
exactly. Like he's been very good.
The best and fairest.
But I think that's a great shout, Scotty. And I think, given how they started, if Fulham can keep, if Scott Parker can keep Fulham up this season, I think he's a pretty decent shout for rivaling David Moyes for manager of the season. To be honest,
I completely agree, and I think it's just, I think, what was it, 5 or 6 games in, or just a few weeks after the transfer window closed, I think the chairman apologised on Twitter that he hadn't invested more.
Yeah,
and I mean, everyone was like, "What on earth are you doing?" Like, I mean, not the time to do it, but it showed that they thought that could have done a bit more. So Parker has done really well with the squad. And I think even if he doesn't keep them up, say like the deficit was just a bit too much, they're better for it next season. They're playing the right football. They're keeping it. I mean, we'll get on to West Brom, but like, the other way around. I just think that if you go back down and you're playing defensive, turgid football, it's really hard to then bounce back in like through the championship where you've got to play a bit more expansively to get the wins that you need. So he's playing sensible football. He's getting the best out of the players. I mean, I'm pretty sure. I'm hoping that he's banned Lookman from ever taking a penalty again after it's like 94th minute Panenka to Fabianski. But yeah, I mean, if you think about that, I mean, there've been moments in a lot of the games where they could have turned losses into draws and draws into wins. So yeah, I think backing the manager in that sense is really good, and he deserves the plaudits. So hopefully,
I think the only thing that kind of goes against Fulham is that if Scott Parker doesn't manage to keep them up, and if Fulham do go down, I just don't think Scott Parker will be there next season. I think he'll be at a Premier League club next season, regardless of whether Fulham stay up.
Yeah, I mean,
I think he's got a music career with the Streets lined up. Actually, that bloke's got English hip hop written all over him.
I remember that, Jesse. That was fucking fantastic.
Name a better crossover, eh? Yeah.
Park class. Jesse, look, there is a question for the two of you gents on Twitter from Connor, aka Tom Aldred fan page. He wants to know who is most likely to be reeled in by Fulham if they're going to reel someone in: Brighton, Burnley, or Newcastle. Scott, do you want to go first?
Newcastle. I play. Jess and I are on the same team as a Newcastle fan, and I think he stopped watching. He's genuinely he says like last Bruce match he just watched it and drunk and just got a bit depressed about it all. There's nothing coming out of it. You've got a couple of decent players in there. Callum Wilson's always good for a few goals. And if you sign Callum Wilson and end up going down, if you're playing him right, it shouldn't be happening. He's a good enough striker to get those goals, but they're just it's not defensively solid. It's not interesting. It's just
Well, and I guess they're another team that's been hammered by injuries, right? They've had Alan Saint-Maximin, and I think Callum Wilson's been out or I think he's out in general for like 6 weeks or something, or 6 weeks.
They can't keep Lascelles fit either. That's a big issue for them as well.
True.
It's funny, this question doesn't include Palace, and Palace would be my answer. I think Palace are going down the way they're going. We'll find out obviously tomorrow with the Brighton game, because that's a big game between Brighton and Palace. But I feel like, I think Newcastle are seriously in danger. Don't get me wrong, but I think Palace are they're in free fall as well. It's going to be very interesting to see, because what could actually help Fulham stay up here is them having, like you mentioned, their fixtures in the next few weeks. They're not easy. But if they come out the other side even with a point from those fixtures, and then maybe a point and a win after that might even be enough to creep up above these teams if they're in free fall and losing every game, which they are at the moment. Palace particularly.
What's bizarre about this conversation, gents, is that I feel like it was about maybe 2 months ago, so maybe November, late December, I think everyone had written off West Brom. Well, I had written off West Brom, Fulham, and Sheffield United as being that's the relegation race that's been run, because the likes of Newcastle, Burnley, Brighton, and Palace were all looking okay. They were picking up wins, they were picking up points, they looked okay at home, and since then, I guess, West Brom, but Fulham seem to have sort of turned a corner a little bit, and those other three teams, sort of maybe barring Brighton, are struggling.
It's because the media, the way they look at it with relegation fights is they go, those teams need to get back in form to get back up. They need to get the results right. What they completely ignore, and this is what my point was originally, is that they're ignoring the teams above them. So they're assuming, all based on assumption, that Palace doesn't shit the bed, that Newcastle doesn't shit the bed, that these teams keep getting results. The minute they stop getting results and the bottom three start to get a few, all of a sudden that gap closes. Like another example in a separate way, Arsenal was copying so much shit early in the season about being in a relegation battle, yet they were only about 8 points behind Chelsea and United and a few of them, and they were like, everyone was just absolutely ripping into Arsenal. And I was like, well, it's only going to take like a draw and a loss for any team above them and a couple of wins for Arsenal, and that's 2 points. And then you're like, why are people writing off those teams when it actually is the teams above them dropping points that allows those teams back into the race? I think Fulham could get out of here just because of Palace and Newcastle potentially dropping in there. So, yeah, it's a big assumption that those teams are going to keep performing well, I think.
Fair enough. All right, gents, let's move on to the other relegation 6-pointer, or the relegation 2-pointer as it turned out to be. This game really was one for the purist only. West Brom had Semi Ajayi sent off after 29 minutes, and neither side could really find a moment of quality to win them the game, though. West Brom gave it their all in the second half with only 10 men, and came close on a few occasions, while Burnley did not play like they had an extra man. They were absolutely dire. And look, to be perfectly honest, I don't remember seeing commentators in sort of the post-match game slamming a team as hard as I saw Burnley get slammed by, I think it was Hargraves, and I can't remember who the other pundit was. Burnley only had one shot on target the entire match, which is like unfathomable how a team can be that bad against the team that's second last, and this team who's second last have only 10 men. Just unfathomable. Burnley did have a pretty decent shout for a pen waved away, but yeah, this one stayed 0-0. Boys, anything to add on this other than it was shit, and I wish I could get back 2 hours of my life?
You know what? This game was so bad, I don't even know if I want to talk about it. But just before, like, we were just talking about the Fulham game before. And again, it just reminded me of what I was saying earlier about the penalties. Did you guys see the penalty at the end of the game? I think it was Areola that came out and absolutely clattered the Sheffield United attacker. Was it Vogel?
Right back, wasn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Jared Vogel, yep.
And not even a referral to VAR. It was just utterly bizarre. Utterly bizarre. I can't believe it. I was like, obviously Damo was in our group chat. And I was just like, why isn't he absolutely blown up at this? Like, I just couldn't believe it.
Whenever a keeper and a player, an outfield player, are involved in a challenge, the keeper gets such a margin of benefit. Now, if they go to ground and their head's in there, yes, they should get all the benefit, whatever. But this was just a 50-50 challenge that the keeper got wrong. The keeper... if it had been in the middle of the pitch and midfield versus midfield, it's always a Sheffield United free kick. So therefore, the same challenge should be a foul the other way. It's
unbelievable. Yeah.
Generally speaking, fellas, we are starting to see creep into the game where challenges in the box are treated totally different to anywhere else on the field. Like the number of times, whether it's Salah or someone else who goes down easily, Zaha or something like that, and a foul is given where nowhere else on the pitch would that be given a foul. And this is probably another example whereby, like, we all know that goalkeepers are a protected species, and sort of I think every team sort of gives as good as they get about that as well. But this was a strange one because you're right, it probably could have been a pen, and if it's an outfield player on halfway, the dude's probably lucky if he isn't getting sent off, which...
Yeah.
But
I mean, just with the Burnley West Brom, I would not have watched this if I was not on this podcast. I knew the result.
We're sorry. We're very sorry.
I was on my Optus app, and I was just
no refunds.
I'm gonna have to. I had to click watch. And I was just like, no, it's just going to be dull. And it was. I mean, Sam Allardyce is not known for his entertainment in games. And he's basically gone, our game plan is over half the team, you're just going to defend. And then you're going to give it to the 3, maybe 4 players we have that have any spark, and then just see if they can score. Like, please, just try. I mean, and to be fair, they came really close. But it only came close because Burnley were...
dire.
I mean, to have no second idea apart from, well, our fullback's open, so I pass it to the fullback, and then he's going to whip the ball in from deep, and then it's cleared. Okay, we'll try that again. Why are you trying it again? Please do something different. But no,
So basically, Sean Dyche's Burnley were Klopp's Liverpool in that they just didn't have a plan B.
Well, Dyche's Burnley was a couple of weeks ago looked like Barcelona against Crystal Palace. So go figure.
This is true. This is true.
Like, what's going on?
I think that was 6 days ago. Alrighty, boys. Let's keep moving though, rather than give that game too much more time. Then the other game, there were two more games. The first one was George's Chelsea travelled down to Southampton. Both teams in very contrasting form. Chelsea's tight defence had seen them win 4 and draw 1 in their last 5, whilst in that run they'd also only conceded 1 goal, which is pretty incredible. Meanwhile, Southampton had lost their last 5 and had conceded 9 in that big win to Man United just a few weeks ago as well. But a bit like the West Brom Burnley game, this was a pretty dull affair. Chelsea were very uninspired in the first half, and probably the most exciting thing about this game was watching Tuchel just lose his mind on the touchline. The other thing I found really interesting about this game was Moussa Djenepo, the Southampton winger. He seemed to be singled out. I don't know if it was intentional, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't intentional, for some special treatment. He just kept getting clattered time after time after time. And there were 2 tackles at least, which were sometimes you hear commentators refer to as orange cards. And one was Kante, and I think the other one was Werner. And neither time the referee dished out a yellow card for either of those 2. So I'm not sure what the referee, what Djenepo had on the referee, or what Chelsea had on Djenepo. But that was wild. Boys, the other really wild thing to come out of this game was I mentioned that Tuchel was he just seemed pissed for most of this game, just absolutely losing his mind on the touchline, which in of itself was pretty comical. But he did make a change at half time. He brought on Tammy Abraham. Brought on Hudson-Odoi for Tammy Abraham, which was a sub that I thought at the time made sense. Hudson-Odoi did not play well, though. There was one point where I think it was Alonso played him in, and Hudson-Odoi was just fast asleep and just didn't even move for the ball. And it ended up that I think Mason Mount ended up chasing down the ball and putting some pressure on the Southampton defender. Pretty weird to watch. And the commentators didn't make that much of it at the time, because I think it was only sort of 5 or 10 minutes into the half. But safe to say, Tuchel was not impressed by Hudson-Odoi's performance, and he hooked him after he'd only been on the pitch for 25 minutes, which, wow, it's been a while since we've seen something like
Brutal.
that. But that sends a very clear message, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was an interesting match, because Southampton haven't been doing very well in the last few. But I like Hasenhüttl and I like Tuchel as managers. They both think what they can try and do, and they've matched the formations, which Hasenhüttl hasn't done in a while. Like, he hasn't played the back 3, but it seemed to work. Like, it seemed to just kill all of Chelsea's space that they've been finding in recent games. Like, Marcos Alonso had nothing really going on apart from a volley wide that he did. They did work. I mean, Minamino's goal was nice as well. It was a really good pass. Kante wasn't quite close enough to the midfielder, and classic back 3. Who picks up which striker? So the guy in the middle just stands in between them, and then that's it. The pass so that was really nice. It's sub. That's big.
That Minamino goal, everything worked out perfectly for Southampton, and nothing went well in that sort of 10-second period for Chelsea. I mean, you had Mendy, Zuma, Azpilicueta, and Kante all either made an error or were standing in the wrong position or something like that. And then for Minamino just to sit him down, as I can't remember which one of you it was that it was your moment of the week, but Minamino sitting down both the goalkeeper and Azpilicueta, and then basically just passing it into the net. Oh, that was sweet.
It's delicious. It's a really good point you make there, Scott, because I think that everyone knows that this period that Chelsea are coming into is going to be a real test as to where they're at, because they have, just coincidentally with Tuchel starting, they've had a pretty decent run of fixtures. So now it's like how are they going to find playing against some of the bigger teams? And this was obviously not quite a top four sort of team, but still a team that knows how to dig in, especially at home. And yeah, they didn't adjust well to a new formation. They didn't adjust well to their space getting closed down. And they have actually very similar issues attacking wise to Liverpool, in the sense that they're having a lot of possession, but they don't necessarily look like they're going to score in games. And that's actually hasn't been necessarily that bad against the bottom teams that we've just been talking about, because they've had so much possession that eventually someone's probably going to get a goal. But this is what I'm saying. Like, if they play against a good team with a good setup, I don't know how they find their way through. They thought maybe that Tommie was going to be the answer. They didn't think after 45 minutes that he was the answer. Then they hook him.
Tommie is never the answer.
Yeah, well, I mean, the jury's still out on Tommie, but I think personally that they're very tidy in possession, and he will continue to persist with that. But I think that they might have issues scoring goals in the coming period unless he can find a way to change his system, because they got really nullified. Mason Mount was the only player on that team who just looked like he could break the game open. He was the one player who just seemed to find a way of picking the lock. He was very, very good last night.
And he did. I'm pretty sure he won the penalty for.
Yep.
Yeah.
And took the penalty as well.
Which, I mean, that in of itself, I guess, watching a young player sort of stand up, win the penalty, and then go to have the balls to say, yep, I'm going to take it too. That was a real sort of Mason Mount leadership moment, I thought, which I think a lot of people expected that Mason Mount would maybe sort of fade into the background once Tuchel arrived, and sort of his what do you call it? Like, what's the opposite of a love child? Like love father? I don't know. His godfather Lampard had left. So I guess it's encouraging for Mount that he did really stand up there and in that moment, winning the foul and converting the penalty. Anything else you guys wanted to mention about this game?
I mean, I completely agree with your the goal scoring issues. I mean, it could have something to do with the fact that Lampard thought the more number 10s he bought, the more goals he would score. But apparently, you can't fit more than one or two into a team. So there you go.
They've done an Everton 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Alrighty, fellas. One final game before we get into the previews, which was Wolves hosted Leeds. This was Friday night, UK time, Saturday morning, Oz time. Only one goal in this one. Wolves won this 1-0 after Adama Traore shot struck the crossbar, bounced down, and then rebounded off the Leeds goalkeeper Islam Meslier and into the goal. Probably one of the most unlucky things I've seen, and I guess you see things like this happen every so often. Boys, what's the most unlucky thing that's happened to you ever? Football unrelated.
I'd say this question because I was completely unprepared for it. I don't even know if I can answer that. I'm racking through my my life, and I can't think of anything that does justice to that question.
I've got something that's very similar to this. I was I playing quite off. I used to play in goal, 5-a-sides. And we were in a tournament, and it was a draw for the final, and it was penalty shootouts for the thing. And one of them I saved. It pushed onto the post, and it came off the back of my head and went in. And I could not. I genuinely, I couldn't believe it. It would have been it. 'Cause it was just sudden death, and there you go. It was it. Just didn't get the bounce right. So I feel for the keeper. There's nothing. I mean, if he hadn't have dived, they wouldn't have scored. But because he tried, because he actually put the effort in, they scored it, and that has got to be gutting. Like, if he was worse.
To quote Homer, the lesson there is never try.
Tommie, if you'd been on a NASA space mission and you just, your pod's just landed in the Atlantic Ocean, and you've just come up and you check your phone to see what's happening in the Premier League. You've been away for a while. If you've been away for the last, for part of the 2020 season and this season, and you see Wolves 1-0 Leeds, you just think that this is another standard Wolves performance, because this is basically the Wolves of old. This is how they've made a living for themselves. Traore goal, 1-0, job done. And I think that if you're a Leeds fan, you're just absolutely blown up, because Rafinha, created about 5 or 6 opportunities, and his teammates couldn't finish them. And it's like Cooper, I saw somebody put on Twitter that Cooper had transferred Rafinha into his fantasy Premier League team, and I thought that the irony that the man that transferred him into his team couldn't put the ball in the back of the net when Rafinha put it on his head from 4 yards out. It was cruel to watch. I mean, I'm not a Leeds fan, but I was watching it and thinking, like, you have to feel hard done by as a Leeds fan in that game. They created so much more. Should have scored at least 1 goal. So
that's just Leeds, though, isn't it? Like, they're just not able to score sometimes.
I love Bielsa's football. I mean, he is like, I mean, if we're talking about different managers and the way they go, like Klopp is committed to the system. Bielsa is committed to this idea that he is just going to give a massive list of instructions to each player, and they're just going to run and do it. Oh, that's it. And he doesn't really care where his weaknesses are. He's just like, we're going to outplay them. But I think they've conceded the most headed goals or set piece goals in the Premier League, and they're also one of the lowest in terms of indirect set pieces. And this showed it. Like, I mean, if you have someone who doesn't head it straight at the keeper, they scored like 2 or 3. I mean, and because usually you'd say if your best chances are from set pieces, you didn't play particularly well. But these were such good chances. Like, these weren't, like a Sam Allardyce Bolton special kind of back post header kind of things. These were like running onto it full speed. All it has to be is, I mean, it's a decent keeper, but a yard either side at that pace, and it's really tough to keep out. So I mean, given him, he'll obviously stay there with Leeds for a while. Hopefully, he kind of does bring in players that can do a bit of both, if he gets the budget to do so, because his teams are great fun. I mean, it's pure like chaos of football. I mean, they've scored loads and conceded loads. But you don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly. They can. I think they blew away one team. Was it like 4-0? And every week you don't know if they're going to win 4-0 or lose 4-0. Like, it's never nothing in between though.
The Bamford disallowed goal though, that was rough. And I think every single team, at least by this stage of the season, has been on the receiving end of one of those decisions by now. And if it's an armpit, an elbow. Usually what disallows the goal is a piece of anatomy that you can't score with. Well, at least on the football field. It's just so cruel. It's just so cruel. Like, you're just watching it and you think, again, going back to Scott's original point, it's just like, I feel like you've just got to give, if you don't know, if you're unsure and you can't make a definitive decision, just give the goal. I think that in general, across the league, if that was the consistent decision, teams would accept it. I know that everyone always will complain, but I think that if you're unsure, you've just got to give the goal, because otherwise you really ruin the spectacle. Yeah.
I mean, I had that suggestion earlier about you have a certain time, or someone was suggesting like you use, like, rather than use really minuscule lines, like you actually have like quite thick borders, and basically that way you get that kind of overlap. And basically then if you've kind of got that 30 centimeters, half a meter give or take overall, then I mean that's what we want. We just don't want people hanging off outside the like 3-5 yards behind the defense. We don't care if it's like just coming through. That's good football. It's just when we want to stop clear and obvious. That's what VAR was for.
You mentioned about the thick lines, mate. In the Netherlands, they have they do use thick lines for their VAR in the Eredivisie. So I think that's proven. I mean, from what I know, to be honest, I don't watch a lot of Dutch football. Apparently, that has turned out to be reasonably successful, and it's a way of getting around that issue. But look, there's still quite a bit of football to be played this round, though. So we'll hook into some of the previews. And look, Scotty, while we've got you on the pod, we will talk a little bit of West Ham. I can finally indulge in a little bit of West Ham chat, especially whilst they're actually a decent team this year. I thought it's finally an opportunity as well for us to talk a little bit more West Ham too. So look, let's hook into West Ham first. West Ham host Jose Spurs. Scotty, look, I'll throw to you, I guess, a nice big juicy question for you first up. I think we talked about West Ham earlier this year when we last had you on the pod about how I think at the time they were playing like a three at the back, and they had Antonio up front, obviously Rice and Souček in the middle. But how have things evolved since, I guess, we last had you on the pod?
I mean, Moyes is really changed. I think I made a post the other day. I think I said if you'd suggested to me that Moyes would be championing like a dynamic three at the back system, utilising wing backs and playing like a front three that doesn't have a striker and winning, I would have either suggested you needed to be put down or you were really harsh to people and bullying them, because but he's done really well in creating space. We've got a number of players that are good on the ball, driving into space, and he's created that. He's worked out how to create the space in front of them. We have a very small squad, and he's worked wonders with it. I mean, we'll get onto it whether we can keep it regarding injuries, but yeah, he's done really, really well. I mean, because he couldn't keep his original back three with the injury to Masuaku. But the players that have come in, like Ben Johnson's worked really hard. Even Fredericks has looked a hell of a lot better than he did before. But yeah, I mean, it does help that Rice and Souček are potentially probably the most consistent six and box-to-box midfielder partnership in the league. I mean, Rice he's always been good at sort of snuffing out chances, putting in the tackles. He's really improved his passing and distribution, and also his own danger up front. He's better at getting forward and that kind of thing.
Well, he's taking free kicks now, which is kind of weird.
And penalties. You've got an absolute midfield of carbohydrates there as well. You've got the rice and potato salad just back to back. I mean, nothing gets through that.
Souček's I think he's the best box-to-box midfielder in the Premier League. I don't think there's another one that keeps up, genuine box-to-box. There's better. I mean, Kante's crazy at six, the way he covers it, and there are better attacking midfielders. But people to offer that kind of transition, danger, if you cross the ball anywhere in East London, Souček gets on the end of it. There's no. That's it. He starts running because he knows where he has to be. He has that knack. We talk about it when, even in our Sunday league side, certain people just know the runs that they've got to do, and they know how to get on it, and he does. And I've never seen him look that tired, which is, I don't know how. I mean, potato salad is obviously the food we've all been sleeping on, and that's it.
That's right.
It's the perfect mix of carbs and protein with eggs in the mayo and the carbohydrates from the potatoes. So it's the perfect meal.
Yep, for sure.
Alrighty, mate. Look, I was mentioning, I think, before the pod started about how it's kind of good this season because after the 2015-16 season, no one was talking about West Ham's great season, where they were inspired by Payet up to, I think it was 7th they finished. But at one point they were in for a shout for making Champions League. And they're looking, I guess, on a similar trajectory this year to probably finish 7th. But look, what's been West Ham's greatest achievement over the last few years? Would it be that 15-16 season? Moyes dragging us West Ham out of relegation after Bilic left. Moyes the second after being involved in another relegation battle, or this season?
I mean, the 15-16 season was it was really not it was special for the fact that it was the last season at Upton Park. It meant a lot that we pushed on all fronts, but I feel like this season's different because that one we were dragged by. Payet was another level for us. He was a player that could in that form. I mean, he got Ballon d'Or votes. I mean, an idea of a West Ham player getting Ballon d'Or votes is
farcical.
Yeah, just you kind of assume someone slipped on the page and accidentally clicked instead. But this season doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel like one person's greatness has kind of dragged the rest of them into it. Moyes deserves a hell of a lot of credit for finding a system and changing systems. I mean, I would have loved to have replaced Ale with any striker. Anyone that has scored a Premier League goal in the last 3 years and can still run would have been a nice one. But
you mean Jesse Lingard? Jesse Lingard?
Yeah, Jesse Lingard has been surprisingly. But again, he's not a striker. My issue is that currently Antonio's got hamstrings made of cheese, and that's our biggest thing up front. So that's a worry. But yeah, I think that if we can keep any kind of semblance of this form up, we're really throwing the cat amongst the pigeons, and it's a great season to do it because, like, since we moved to the London Stadium, if the game is 0-0 after 70 minutes and we've been a bit dull, the crowd haven't sort of like got behind us and lifted it. It's got aggressive, it's got a little bit feisty rather than it being positive. So no crowds is kind of, I think, like us and Aston Villa have probably been the teams that have benefited most from no crowds. So maybe when we get crowds back, the atmosphere will be slightly different. People will be hopeful coming back in. But yeah, that kind of Jesse Lingard, Lanzini, Fornals, doing like Moyes is doing well at making them useful players and getting them in and around the box where they can do something.
For me, I think Moyes' greatest achievement this year was where we looked good under a back three or a back five, and then Masuaka got injured, and I thought the wheels are going to come off here once we go to a back four because we just don't have quite the same solidity. We had to play Creswell at left back. But even going to a back four, West Ham still looked defensively solid, which is kind of really weird to say because we haven't been defensively solid with a back four probably since Bilic was at West Ham.
I'm glad you raised that, Tommie, because we've talked about the attack, but I think from an outside perspective for me, that's been probably by far and away the most impressive thing is the defense. And I know that's something that you already associate with a Moyes team as just being organised, but you watch them when they're under the pump and they really don't allow a lot of space. And it takes a real moment of magic to get behind them. I think early in the season when we beat West Ham at home, it was only because Shaqiri came on and put a ridiculous pass through. It took someone to do something mercurial to get through the back of that defense. So his the amount of clean sheets really speak for themselves. And Cresswell, I think we talked about Cresswell in one of the previews or something, and we were talking about how is he going to, he's been there forever. How's he going to contribute? Did I hear the other day that the guy's got something like 8 or 9 assists this season? It's something extraordinary. I don't know if it's been of their direct assists or if some of this is skewed, but he just seems to be having a fantastic season and he's a player that I didn't expect to be banging it this season.
So he's not doing that well. Aaron Cresswell's got 6 assists for the season, which, to be honest, does make him equal 4th with Luca Digne and Marcus Rashford. So, that's something I didn't think we would be saying at the beginning of the season, that Cresswell is equal 4th for assists at this point of the season.
I mean, over the summer transfer window in the UK, I was saying that left back was an issue. Left back was an area we really needed to sort out. But what Moyes has done is, for the last few years, Cresswell has just been dealing with a winger that kind of doesn't like defending. And he's had the entirety of that left side to Marshall. Moyes has ensured that people complained about Fornals sticking out on the left there, but what Fornals does is he works back. He makes sure that Cresswell always has some company, and that means that Cresswell's job defensively went from, okay, you've got to deal with every attack there, to hold them up. If you delay them 5 seconds, we can get back. And that's what Moyes would have pushed into him. He said, you don't have to make the tackle, you just have to stop them getting past you. And offensively, his free kicks over the last few years have been spotty at best, but he's really worked on that. And from free play as well, I don't know. I actually did a video on this a couple months or so into the season about how the back five really, him at centre back, really helped his attacking play because he didn't have to worry about bombing up constantly, but he kind of got the ball in a deep position and then just whipped it in. Like, he didn't have any thinking to do. There was no like, oh, okay, should I try and beat the player here? It was like, okay, cool. Have I got a simple pass on? If not, that ball is going in. Antonio's going to attack it. Souček's going to be in there. And there's probably going to be another player that will pick up pieces. And that kind of trust in other people has really helped. Like Cresswell, it's helped. I mean, Kufau has been great on that right-hand side as well. And the centre-backs actually look confident in each other.
It's been a wild season and wildly unexpected that West Ham are doing so well, which has been a pleasant surprise. I'm sure it has been for you too, Scotty. Look, this afternoon though, West Ham play Spurs in I guess an important game for both teams, and arguably it's more important for West Ham as Champions League qualification appears to be slipping away for Spurs though. What's your prediction for this one and why, Scotty?
I'm really confident. I think if you're playing Football Manager, you'd pick the Spurs team. They've got the attributes, they've got their, they've got the team there. But Jose's more, maybe his magic touch is waning, but they don't look particularly confident. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win to West Ham.
Very good. All right, Jesse, it's time. Wake up, mate. It's time to get back involved after a little bit of West Ham chat. Aston Villa are hosting Leicester, in which I think has potential to be probably one of the games of the round. This could be a goal-a-thon, which maybe guarantees that it's going to be a 0-0 draw. But Leicester are coming off that big win against Liverpool last week, while Villa only have 2 wins in their last 5. Jesse, who's your pick for this one and why?
Well, first of all, listeners and watchers, I'm the worst tipster you'll ever come across on MTech. Everything that I tend to tip on this platform is the exact opposite result. So, I mean, read into that how you will. This game is going to be heavily influenced on Grealish's fitness, because I don't know if you guys have seen, but rumors have it. I don't know if it's been confirmed yet, but apparently he's done a serious injury in training, was the rumors on Twitter anyway. So whether or not that's actually true, we'll find out obviously later on. But if he's out, that'll completely change the game. So I think that if he's fit, it could be a really tight match and maybe a 1-1 draw, which is a pretty boring prediction, but probably what I think probably what I think is going to happen. But to be honest, if he's not there, I think Leicester could win this one. So I think that depending on Grealish's fitness, that's where I think it's going to go. But rumors are that he's out of this game, and could be out for over a month.
Has real potential to, I guess, really upset their season as well.
Well, they've got an absolute shit fest of fixtures coming up, guys. I mean, wow, like they've had some good fixtures. I think it's after a few game weeks from now that their run home is brutal. So they don't want to lose Grealish going into that run. Even though they've got games in hand as well. I know they've got games in hand, so they're in a good position, don't get me wrong. But it'll be pretty disappointing if they have a really poor end of the season, because they've done so well up until now.
Scotty, Arsenal are coming off a 4-2 win over Leeds, whilst the City juggernaut looks unstoppable at the moment. Scotty, do you think Arsenal can stop City?
I mean, it would be really interesting, Arteta-wise. This is the master versus the apprentice kind of thing. Arteta hasn't shown too much against the big sides. Like, he's kind of tried to nullify, and I don't know whether Arsenal haven't had the personnel to do it, or the plan hasn't really come off. But I mean, Aubameyang is scoring and then missing sitters. I mean, and you basically need, like, if Arsenal are going to win or get anything out of this match, they're going to get a few chances and they need to put them away, because Pep's teams always work at, like, they run at a hard 90% kind of like on, and then suddenly they click and they will hit 100%, and then they just don't stop winning for ages. And it's imperceptible to work out what that click was, but sometimes it just happens. So I think right now they're probably the best footballing side in the world when they play like this. I mean, you've got teams out there like PSG with Mbappe and that kind of thing. Have got players that can change games in like a flash, but City's system and ability to just go, well, that player isn't quite having a very good game today. Let's bring another player on who's just going to do better than them.
It's stupid.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's demoralising looking at it as as if you're a Premier League defender coming up against City, it's just going to be 90 minutes of the most painful football you've ever put yourself. Because you're just going to watch the ball move around, and then suddenly there's going to be a player next to you. You think you're marking him, and then he's 10 yards away, and he's got the ball, and you're like, oh no, and you just have to run. That's it. So Arsenal, if they play David Luiz, I think this could be a big City win, because I mean he's just a football chaos machine. But I think Arteta will try his best, but I think it'll be like 2-0 City, 2-1 maybe.
I think Arteta needs to put his arm around Aubameyang and say, listen, mate, if you're as prolific as I was as an Everton striker, go out there and get me a goal.
Brilliant. Jesse, Man United are hosting Newcastle. Man United had a big win in Spain midweek, whilst Newcastle are the closest team to being sucked into the relegation zone, as we talked about already. Jesse, who is your pick for this one?
Well, I mean, I can't not pick United. I mean, United should win this game, should win it comfortably. But the narrative is building around Newcastle, and will they show some fight? We've seen United recently go to West Brom and have a draw when they should have gone there and won convincingly. So I can't read the form of United, but I'm going to have to go safe and say a 2-0 to United. But, you know, stranger things have happened, guys. I mean, Newcastle should be playing like a team that's their lives depend on it, because they're going to get sucked into that relegation zone real fast if they don't get some points.
So pretty much means that Newcastle are going to win then.
Basically, as I said before, whatever I tip the opposite. And
at what point when you're playing United do you just sacrifice one player to just stand next to Bruno Fernandes for the entire 90 minutes? And that's literally all his job. Just go, you do that. We'll play with 10 men for the rest of the game. If you let Bruno Fernandes get any more than 5 yards away from you, like, you'll find your week's wages. Kind of, that is it. You just stay next to him. Because
Shelby did that to Hamas in the Everton derby. I mean, and got into Hamas's head. They just swapped. Remember, it was like Shelby just basically booted him until he got a yellow card, and then he swapped with Hayden and said, "Now your turn." And then he booted him until he got a yellow card, and Hamas just got so disillusioned that he became like, they nullified him. So I wonder if that's what they're going to do, Scott. I wonder if they're just going to assign somebody to Bruno and just boot him until he gets, because he is known for getting flustered when he does get fouled too much. Bruno, he loses his head.
I feel like that's something Rafa Benitez would do, is say, yep, all right, we're going to man mark him for the first half with, like you say, Shelby, and then in the second half, it'll be Hayden. Boys, get a yellow card, that's fine, but just don't get two. And if you get yellow, well, you're swapping over, and then maybe at the 60-minute mark, we'll tag you out and bring on someone else who can kick him for the final 30 minutes. But like that's a way that like some teams use, I guess, against a big team like this, where they have a single talisman who really that everything goes through. Interesting. All right. So, look, the final game that we're going to preview, though, is Brighton versus Crystal Palace, which, Jesse, I think it was you that rightly pointed out that this is a bit of a relegation six-pointer, even though neither team is in the relegation zone right now. If either team's performances continue the way they're going, they could get sucked into that, though. The derby that no one really understands why it's a derby, Brighton are in decent form, whilst Crystal Palace are been pretty terrible, whilst Wilfried Zaha's been injured, and he's out as well for this one. So, look, Scotty, what's your pick? Do you think this is an easy win for Brighton?
I like Brighton. I mean, stats-wise, they shouldn't be where they are. They do perform quite well, but they're just not getting the goals to get those results they need. I think they're a better side than Palace, and I think, as long as they don't shit the bed in the first half an hour, they should control the game and go from there. I mean, in your derby point, I remember this back in the UK, and people were, it's a Brighton Palace derby. I had some Palace supporting friends. Like, why is it a derby? They went, it's not that far away. I said, it's like nearly 40 miles, which for the UK is a long way. You get a fair other, lump of clubs for Palace. But apparently, I looked it up because I was really interested. like the only club closer to Brighton than Crystal Palace is Crawley. So therefore, I can kind of understand Brighton really desperate for a derby. So it's like a derby that because there are no other derbies for them to have.
It's real A-League areas, huh?
So it's like, oh, your emblem's an eagle and ours is a seagull. I don't like that. Let's make it a derby.
Yeah. That's probably the best reason you got.
It's like the fighting over a chip derby.
Yeah.
It reminds me in the A-League, Tommie, of is it the M4 or M3 derby with the with Newcastle? What's the name of the one with Newcastle up on the coast?
I think it's the F1 derby, isn't it?
F1 derby, yeah, sorry. So I heard someone the other day refer to it should be the El Clasicoast, which I thought would be so much better.
Yes. That is brilliant. Oh, I love that. That has got to catch on.
Yeah, trademark that one, boys.
Yeah, you heard it here. Maybe not first, but definitely second or more than a game.
100%.
Alrighty. Scotty, what was your pick for this one, though?
I think Brighton will win this 2-0. Very simple game.
Very good. All right, that wraps up all of our reviews and previews for the Premier League. Colby's going to jump up with some A-League chat as well, but unfortunately, that's all that the three of us have got for you today. It's been great joining you here in your lounge room or your commute to work, wherever it might be. But until next time, thanks for joining us.